Anyway, yeah, good to see you. So my name's Vidyadaka, and this is a lunchtime drop-in class. But this week this part of the class has been what's called a meditation toolkit, where I've been giving short, hopefully helpful instructions before meditation and exploring our experience in various ways. So I'll just give you a very brief recap, and then I'll talk a little bit about today's topic and give you a few suggestions on how to work in meditation today, particularly doing the metta bhavana, and then we'll get on with some meditation. So what I'm exploring is how the Buddha talks about experience, and the Buddha talks about experience being made up of, in a sense, 5 parts. So whatever experience you have, whether it's internal or external, whatever happens to you, however you perceive the world, however you perceive yourself, you can simply examine that happening by looking at 5 aspects of your mind. There's nothing else outside those 5 aspects. Everything that happens, everything that exists, can be talked about within these 5 dimensions. Come on in. Just make yourself at home. And traditionally they're called the 5 skandhas, which skandhas usually is translated something like aggregate or heap, which is a bit like slightly abstract. I've been translating them this week as forces, so they're the 5 forces that make up your life, and they're the active 5 active forces in your mind and in your life. And the reason it's good to become aware of them is because we habitually associate ourselves with them, and unless we're aware of them, it's very hard to become more creative, more open, more compassionate, more loving, more mindful. So they just serve as a model for looking at experience. So the first one that we explored was consciousness. Everyone's conscious. Well, not everyone is conscious, but almost everyone is conscious. If you're not conscious, you don't know whether you're conscious or not. You don't know anything. Consciousness provides the experience of knowing anything. If you're not conscious, you don't know anything. You don't know anything about anything, whether things exist or not. Even if you get knocked out for an operation or something, lots of things happen to you. An operation carries on, but you don't know anything about it. You know nothing about it. So if you haven't got consciousness, you don't know anything. You don't know anything about the world. Yesterday we explored the body, the physical body, and we were also exploring that in terms of, well, it's not just physical, it's also spacious, and you can look for that spaciousness in meditation. If you have consciousness and if you have a body, hi, come on in, that's fine. If you have consciousness and you have a body, you also have sensory experience. You can't not have sensory experience if you've got consciousness and a body. We've all got those things. We're all having sensory experience. Sensory experience just happens. There's not a lot you can do about it. There's not a lot you can do about having consciousness. There's not a lot you can do about having a body. All these 3 things are given. Sensory experience is usually pleasant or painful or neutral. So we were looking at that on the second day. So far we've just been looking at what's kind of there. There's not a lot you can do about any of them in a particular way. They're given. what we're going to do for the next couple of days is to look at what you can do. So not all of our experience is just simply given. It's not all just fact. What we're going to look at today and tomorrow is what I'm calling activity, but it's also sometimes translated as volition or tendencies or will, but it's the active doing in response to body, consciousness and feeling. Yeah, so it's our active decision-making, choice-making way of acting in the world. And when I talk of acting, it's not just physical acting, i.e. walking around doing things, although, of course, that's a major part of our life. But it's mental acting. So, and particularly in meditation, what I want us to explore is the action of our mind. Yeah, so there's consciousness, there's body, there's a mind, there's feelings and sensations. Don't need to worry about anything to do with that, really. But then we act, don't we? We move. Our body and our mind moves in response to those things. So that's what I want to explore today, activity. And it's not, we're not trying to get into a state of no activity, of course, because we have to act. We act all the time. We have to move and adapt. But what we're trying to do is bring more awareness to the movement of our mind and where our mind goes to. Often with activity, we go to the place we went last time. Yeah, so often that's what happens. What we're trying to do is trying to see that more clearly so that we can choose how we want to act, if you see what I mean. So, when you come along to the lunchtime class, whether you're leading it or not, and there's a film crew in the main shrine room and it's all a bit chaotic, it's very, very easy to start getting a bit anxious. That anxious manifests physically as tension. It manifests in the mind as expectations that aren't being met and generalizations about the situation. And then, of course, with that bit of tension and with a head full of expectations and ideas about how the world should be rather than how it actually is, we can very quickly go into a habitual way of behaving. So you could quite quickly get anxious, quite quickly think, I don't want to do this, or they shouldn't be there. And before you know it, you could be speaking slightly harshly to someone. Do you see what I mean? So it's very, very easy to habitually act in ways that we've acted before. So over the next 2 days, I want to explore that habitual or that way of acting. So that activity, that volition. And that volition has 2 main modes. One is aversion, where we want to, we try and resist the situation and want it to be different and possibly blame or criticise or want to get away from. And the other is craving, where we like the situation and we want more of it and we want it to continue. Yeah, so those are the 2... Come on in. Those are the 2 kind of main modes in which we act in unawareness. And today I want to explore aversion because we're doing the metta bhavana, and when we're cultivating metta, do get a mat and cushion if you want, or you can wait and when we meditate you can get it. When we do the metta, we're actively counteracting aversion. So we're still doing something, aren't we? In the Metabhavana, we're doing something, we're acting. But what we're trying to do, we're trying to act in a new way. And we're trying to act with metta. And in the meditation, we're trying to do that mentally. In our life, we're trying to do that mentally and physically, sort of mentally and emotionally. So in the Metabhavana, we need to, first of all, notice the tendency of aversion that we all have. It's no one's free from it. And then we need to find a way of developing metta so that we act in opposition to aversion. Yeah. So one of the main characteristics of aversion or craving is we generalize about the situation. So we have generalisms, is that right? Generalizations of a situation and expectations. And when we generalize the situation negatively, like, oh yeah, he always does that, or typical, such and such is doing that again, typical, or the train's always late, or whatever it is, oh, another grey day, typical. They're just generalizations about experience. So experience is happening, but it's not very well noticed, and so we generalize about it. And if it doesn't take our fancy, we criticize it. So if that generalization is negative, it leads to aversion. So it's of course very common when you fall out with someone, or whether you're mildly irritated with someone just because they're not behaving exactly in the way that you like. It's very easy to generalize about them and tell other people, isn't it, and say, oh yeah, so and so always does like this, he's always like that. It's really, really annoying. But the annoyance comes out of the generalisation, if you see what I mean. It doesn't come out of actual experience, it comes out of a generalisation. And also you might have expectations, like you might expect people to be different than they are. You might expect other people to be better than they are. It's very, very easy to have quite high expectations of others and quite low expectations of yourself. So these are the things that feed activity that is aversive. Okay. And of course we can get easily caught up. If we're not careful, we just get easily caught up in what's called prapancha, mental proliferation. And you know what it's like if you've fallen out. If you've fallen out with someone, it's very, very easy just to spend hours, days, waking up again the next day. Oh yeah, just rumbling away. You go around doing your own thing, but rumbling away in your mind is, the flow of negative critique and blame of the world or another person. It's so painful. And it's not necessarily, of course it can result in pain for the other person, but predominantly it's painful for us. Most people want to be happy, but identifying and holding on to those sorts of stories is painful for us. It's like holding on to hot coals. So what I'd like us to do in the meditation, I'll lead a Metabhavana meditation. What I want us to do is particularly just focus on any aversive movements of your mind. So it's not, of course, always to do with people. It can be to do with, anything. It can be very, very subtle indeed. Just like, maybe you feel it's a bit cold in here or something, and you can easily just kind of try and resist being cold. You kind of somehow mentally resist being cold. Actually, you can just relax and be cold and notice the sensations. Or, if the meditation's going on a bit longer than you'd like, you can just sit there thinking, I'm just going to wait until he rings the bell. I'm not, or whatever. You can resist experience in all sorts of ways or all sorts of levels. So I want you to see if you can notice that in your mind, however subtle. If someone makes a noise in the shrine room, well, of course we're all trying to be quiet together, but if someone makes a noise and then you get in a mood about it, even a very, very, very small mood, like, oh, they just disturbed me. Actually, they haven't disturbed you, you've just disturbed yourself, if you see what I mean. The story that you create disturbs yourself. The sound doesn't disturb yourself. It's you and your habit of aversion that disturbs your mind. And of course that happens at very subtle levels, but it can happen at extremely gross levels that can sort of really ruin lives, and it can certainly ruin nations and peoples, can't it? So that's what we're exploring today. It's the aversive activity of our mind. So I want you to look out for any expectations that you might be holding. It's pretty hard to spot expectations until you realise they haven't been met, by which time you're already in a bit of a bad mood. But anyway, see if you can notice any expectations. You might even have expectations about how the meditation's going to go. See if you can notice any generalisations. Just when you're just generalising sort of a bit illegitimately about the world or about others. And if you're doing that, I really urge you to see if you can somehow notice how that is painful in and of itself. I think that's really key. If you can see that narrow state of mind, what you've essentially done is narrowed your consciousness, into a very small little kind of aversive tendency. See if you can just notice how painful that is on a subtle level. And if you can let that go, it's like you return to consciousness, and consciousness is bigger. But while we're clinging on to aversion, we're kind of trying to force our consciousness, which can be blissful and infinite, into a small little dark box sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, so notice any expectations you might have, notice any generalisations you might have, particularly about the people you bring to mind. And if you're doing any of that, notice in a way the unsatisfactory nature of it. Notice what it feels like to be holding on to stories, generalisations, grudges. Okay, so that's the task today.